The Hulk and Bruce Banner are truly incredible. As Tony would say, I'm a big fan of the way he loses control and turns into an enormous green rage monster. It's just a treat to watch him smash things, you know? But the Hulk doesn't always win, right? There are countless comic storylines where he not only gets his butt kicked, but he actually doesn't survive the encounter. Yeah, just who or what is powerful enough to take down the Hulk? And how gruesome does it get? Well, that's what I'm discussing today, so let's get started right now. In the MCU, the two strongest Avengers have punched it out a few times. Yes, I'm talking about Thor and Hulk. They first crossed paths on the helicarrier in the first Avengers movie, leading to a funny moment of Hulk nearly breaking the ship around him as he tried to pick up Thor's hammer. Then the two had a much more interesting battle on Sakaar when Thor thought his friend from work was chill, but turned out he was in a major fighting mood. But thanks to Thor Ragnarok in general, the two have formed an interesting partnership and general friendship that I want to see more of. I say all that to preface the fact that in the comics, Thor has taken out the Hulk a few times in brutal fashion. The first time was in a What If comic simply about what if the Hulk went berserk. In it, the Hulk, he goes berserk if you couldn't tell, and turns into the rampaging monster that the normal timeline Bruce fears he can become. It's an absolutely savage battle between Hulk and the other Avengers, with him mowing through them all like they were paper. It's only after Iron Man is crushed and it says his heart stops that Thor realizes what he must do. I don't think it says this in the comic, but I think Thor had just stepped out of a showing of Man of Steel and took a cue from that, meaning he snapped Hulk's neck. Not a pleasant way to go, and even though this is a what if, I don't think I'd ever imagine Hulk could have his neck broken like that. I know it's morbid, but that's not really a cool death, though it does show how strong Thor can be. And actually, this isn't the only time Thor has taken out the Hulk. In Part 5 of the Reigning arc of Thor comics, it was revealed in the storyline that in the future, Thor sort of went off the deep end and decided he needed to rule over the 9 realms. Obviously, this created some backlash, and Earth's mightiest heroes had to stand against him. It's shown that all the heavy hitters like Wolverine, Captain America, Doctor Strange, The Thing, and the Hulk all tried to stop Thor's rampage, but to no avail. And there's a specific shot of the Hulk impaled through the chest while Thor stands triumphant. So if there's one Avenger who can constantly stand toe-to-toe with the Hulk, it's Thor. Do you think these two will ever fight again in the MCU? I hope so. Old Man Logan is a gruesome, dirty, fantastic comic story that really puts Wolverine through the ringer. This alternate universe is one where the world has mostly been conquered and divided by the supervillains, and it's not very pleasant to say the least. In the story, Logan lives with his wife and children in a territory known as Hulkland, which is run by the Hulk gang, which are hillbilly, incestuous grandchildren of the Hulk himself. He owes the Hulk gang rent, and goes off to do a job in order to earn some income. But while he's gone, the Hulk gang gets bored and wipes out Logan's family anyways. Bummer. This, of course, sends Logan into another classic Logan rage, and he proceeds to wipe out every single member of the Hulk gang, leading him directly to the top dog. Now, Bruce Banner isn't doing so well in this comic if you haven't been able to tell. The gamma radiation has poisoned his brain in his old age, and he basically admits he had Logan's family executed just to get Logan angry enough to fight again. Gross, right? Well, it gets worse. The two former heroes fight each other, and it ends with Hulk easily beating Logan, ripping him apart and eating him. Yeah, we can't really show the full extent of this gruesome ending because, well, just imagine it's rainbows and butterflies that come out of Logan when he's ripped apart. And you think that's the end, but nope, it gets insane. Later, thanks to Logan's healing factor, he actually puts himself back together in Hulk's stomach and proceeds to burst out of him, eliminating this weird version of Hulk once and for all. What a way to go. I didn't really have a phobia of people bursting out of my chest, but I think I do now. Be careful what you eat, folks. There'll be a few entries on this list of people who think with their heads and realize that fighting Hulk head-on may not be the best idea and have to find different ways to solve their Hulk problem. First up is, of course, Deadpool. Everyone loves Deadpool. Everyone wants Deadpool in the MCU so that he can bounce off of the Avengers in his own special Deadpool way. At least, that's what I want. There's a major logistical nightmare to that idea, but who cares? I just want Deadpool in the MCU. Or who knows, if they followed the classic comic Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, then maybe it's best he stays in his own little world for a while. The title of the comic pretty much sums it all up, right? Deadpool goes on a mission to wipe out everyone in the Marvel Universe. And although this is a fun comic, you have to wonder if his methods would actually work on the heroes. I mean, he takes Spider-Man out by just shooting him in the head, which feels like something Spidey should be able to sense and dodge. He does get creative with a lot of other Avengers though, like he uses Pym particles to hide bombs in the Avengers compound and blows the more fleshy ones into the afterlife, while he also uses Pym particles to make Thor's hammer grow to an extreme size as it's about to go back to him, which crushes the God of Thunder. After those two events, the Hulk's demise is a little bit of a letdown. So Hulk shows up, rips Deadpool apart, and then calls it a day. But of course, Deadpool heals and then follows Hulk until he reverts back to his Banner persona, leaving Deadpool the opportunity to decapitate Banner, thus ensuring the Hulk can't come out anymore. Would that work in the MCU? I don't know. We've seen Bruce become a crumpled mush pile in Thor Ragnarok, and Hulk still saved him. But it's Deadpool. Deadpool can do anything, right? It's always great to see more average heroes take on the big dogs, and that's what happened in the Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe storyline, which paints the picture of instead of Frank Castle losing his family to a gangland slaying, his wife and children are collateral damage in a massive superhero fight. This causes the Punisher to want to start punishing heroes instead of villains. One of his first casualties in his actual crusade is Spider-Man, because Spidey always has bad luck in terms of these comic crossovers, and then the Punisher starts working his way to the Hulk. It's a pretty simple execution method. The Hulk goes on a rampage, the Punisher uses a dart gun to put a tracking transmitter on him, then when Hulk reverts back to Bruce Banner in an alleyway, Punisher does what he does best and gets rid of Bruce Banner. It doesn't have a whole lot of style, but the Punisher doesn't really care about that. He cares about getting the job done, and it's clear that someone like Frank Castle needed to be a bit smarter when it came to taking down someone as powerful as the Hulk. Although I think it's safe to say the original Civil War comic series was better, the sequel series, Civil War II, definitely had its share of highlights. One of those is when Hawkeye took out Bruce Banner. It's a pretty shocking moment. The whole setup is how the two sides are divided about what to do in terms of stopping people who didn't necessarily do anything wrong yet, but could. There was an inhuman precog who could see the future and see horrible events before they happened, which led to a whole the future is set in stone versus the future can be changed type of debate. Anyways, the precog Ulysses saw a vision that Hulk was going to go on another rampage and cause massive destruction and death to the people around him. When Captain Marvel and others go to arrest Bruce, Hawkeye immediately shoots him with an arrow, killing him. It turns out Bruce Banner had come to Hawkeye much earlier and gave him a special arrow to take him out for good if there was ever a chance he'd lose control again. So Hawkeye was soon cleared of all the charges brought against him, but it led to the death of the Hulk, which is always a shame. Onslaught is one of those X-Men villains that I'm surprised we haven't seen in live action yet. Maybe he could be a great villain in the eventual X-Men Avengers crossover because he's powerful enough to destroy the whole world. I mean, he basically tried that in the comics. So in this event series, the mutants and the Avengers weren't doing great against this villain. Jean Grey tried a Hail Mary in shutting down Bruce Banner's brain so that the Hulk could act even more savage, and while this actually worked against Onslaught's physical form, Hulk ended up releasing his true psionic form, which unleashed a power that threatened to destroy everything and had the side effect of separating Banner and Hulk into two people. Though that didn't matter for very long because the only way to stop Onslaught's psionic powers were for all the heroes to sacrifice their lives and jump into his special beam thing to make him dissipate. It ended up working at a great cost, with most heroes, including the Hulk, gone. And because this is a comic book, it's very clear that all these heroes would stay gone forever, right? I always find Maestro's demise poetic in a fun, twisted Marvel Comics way. In the comics, Maestro is a version of the Hulk from an alternate future, where nuclear war wiped out mostly everyone except the Hulk. He had absorbed a lot of the nuclear radiation, and that drove him a bit nutty, while he still possessed Banner's intelligence on top of the extra strength thanks to the radiation. Our Hulk couldn't beat him in a normal fistfight, so he had to get creative. In the end, this unstoppable version of Hulk, known as Maestro, was stopped by some good old-fashioned time travel. Maestro was transported back to the moment of the very first gamma radiation explosion that turned Bruce Banner into the Hulk in the first place. And the amount was just too much for Maestro to handle, and it killed him. Imagine that. The event that turned you into the Hulk actually is the only thing that could stop the evil Hulk from the future. That's such an interesting concept, don't you think? Remember the fun fan theory that suggested the best way to beat Thanos was just to send Ant-Man in and literally to find a way inside Thanos through a certain body part and then expand to make him explode? Well, we got to see a version of that in the What If TV show. Yeah, I know it's not a comic demise, but I think it's so interesting that it deserved a mention. So while in Bruce Banner form, evil Hank Pym was able to inject himself secretly inside Bruce and into his bloodstream. Then, when he turned into the Hulk, evil Hank used those enlarging devices to make the Hulk's heart and body grow rapidly in just a few seconds. Hulk exploded everywhere, and it's actually a really smart way to beat the Hulk. It shows that if Ant-Man did want to turn evil, even the heavy hitters like Hulk would be in serious trouble. We all wanted a Planet Hulk adaptation, but it looks like the closest thing we'll get is the Thor Ragnarok subplot, which is fine and is better than nothing. Plus, it's a lot of fun, but it just would have been nice to see Hulk get the spotlight he deserves in the MCU. But a lot of people are also a fan of World War Hulk, which is the sequel series that sees Hulk return to Earth for revenge after his wife and unborn child are taken out in a massive explosion that the Illuminati seemed to have planted. But there's another what if that asks, what if Hulk sacrificed himself instead? In that story, Hulk throws his wife and unborn child to safety just in time, causing Hulk to perish when the massive explosion incinerates the rampaging green monster. This in turn causes his wife to go to Earth and seek revenge. And if you thought Hulk was scary, well, his wife isn't much better. It's nice to include a death on this list that sees Hulk dying specifically to save someone else. I mean, that's better than being executed in an alley, right? At the end of the Indestructible Hulk comic series, Bruce Banner was shot by a mysterious assailant. It turns out it was none other than Betty Ross, Bruce's comic love and his MCU old flame that he never mentions anymore. Betty had knowledge that the Hulk was going to cause an Extinction-level event and made the difficult choice to end Hulk by going through Bruce. Though, again, this is the comics where things are never that simple. Bruce and Hulk didn't technically die here, but they weren't the same after this. Bruce suffered severe brain damage where he lost his genius intellect, and that led to the creation of Doc Green, a new version of the Hulk who was super smart himself. Wild for sure. Thor Ragnarok may have had Hulk almost beaten by a giant wolf, but in the comics, it took it one step farther. During an arc when Hulk was Professor Hulk, he was fighting a Thor imposter. This eventually led to a confrontation with the creature known as Horfin, the child of the Fenris wolf and a frost giantess. Hulk and his ally Agamemnon realize they're in trouble when Horfin appears and it eats the two of them, killing them instantly. How do I know they didn't survive this? Well, because the comic literally ends with the words, "and then they died," just in case you weren't clear by all the green blood around the monster's mouth. And yes, this counts as a death, even though the very next issue sees Professor Hulk's soul trying to escape the prison he now finds himself in. Now, I kind of wish Fenris won against the Hulk in Thor Ragnarok, sending Hulk and Bruce on their own spiritual journey together in a solo movie. That's not too much to ask for, right? This one is more of an honorable mention because I think it's more of a metaphorical death rather than a literal one. In the comic arc Hulk The End, we see that frequent scary future where nuclear holocaust has wiped out everyone except the Hulk and this special breed of giant cockroach that wants to feed on Hulk's regenerating flesh. Gross. But something really tragic happens at the end of the story. Bruce suffers a heart attack, and if he dies, then the Hulk dies too. Banner tries to convince Hulk to let him go so that they both don't have to be alone anymore, so that they can find peace in death, but Hulk says no. He changes into Hulk at the last second, leaving Banner gone forever. If Hulk ever changes back into Banner, then Hulk will die. But Hulk doesn't want that. He wants to prove he's the strongest, and the only way to do that is to keep on living in this world alone without anyone and only giant cockroaches to beat up on. It's one of the most tragic ends to a Hulk comic, and although Hulk is technically alive at the end of it, he's basically dead on the inside. Okay, I had to save a fun one for last. In the Ultimate Universe, there exists a version of the Hulk that's lovingly nicknamed Nerd Hulk. It's a clone from Bruce Banner's stem cells, and basically it's Banner's intellect with Hulk's brute strength, but without the anger. Anyways, the Ultimate Universe had to deal with an outbreak of vampires, and it got messy. Eventually, Nerd Hulk was turned, and while this intelligent group of vampires grew stronger, Nerd Hulk eventually took control and became their new leader. So yeah, Nerd Hulk led a vampire army. Where's that in the MCU? Anyways, in order to beat this horde of vampires, Captain America, who thanks to the super soldier serum had purged the vampire virus from his body, used a special hammer to teleport them all to Iran where the sun was up. Everyone started to burn, even Nerd Hulk, and if that wasn't enough, while Nerd Hulk was on fire, Captain America decapitated him once and for all. Hey, when I started this list, I didn't think I'd be writing Nerd Hulk gets turned into a vampire and then is decapitated by Captain America while on fire, but here we are. Okay, if you were given some top secret assassin job and given the assignment to take out the Hulk, how would you do it? Sure, the easy way is to just take out Bruce Banner, but bonus points if you can describe a way that involves going head to head with Hulk himself. Let me know in the comments and let's see who's the most creative.